Hey my loves, happy Friday. Tim Wild, and I'm in the woods, but I'm in very different woods today. Look at that. Found a stonking little bit of forest or land and a tree stump to park my bum upon and just have a little chat. So I'm currently in Stuttgart preparing for the weekend's workshop, and it's lovely around here. I've already been out for a nice long walk this morning and just having a bit of a look round. Yeah, just share some of these forest vibes with you. And just up in the kind of the distance there, you can see the hotel. So I haven't come far. I've already done my mileage this morning. So what we're going to talk about today, all sorts of different vibrations coming in, going on, and there's a lot of what we would call upheaval or unrest in the matrix, which is to be predicted. And I think some of the work that I'm going to be doing here this weekend is working on balancing that out. And we've all got a very personal role to play with that. So I think that's what I'm going to look upon. I'm going to cast my thoughts and my feelings and my inspiration and what's coming through to look at how we are responding to the world around us, what our responsibilities are for this more than anything else. And I think it's a high level of responsibility. We might think that we have no part of it, or we might have a lot of time and energy that's invested into it, a lot of emotions. And I am talking about the field or the realm almost of unrest and unease. We're seeing an advancement, an increase in agitation within the field. And you might be living directly in the middle of this. You might be really caught up in it. You might be feeling the waves. You might be spending a lot of time trying to keep yourself clear of it. I mean, you can always come out into the forest like I have, where such frequencies and vibrations and thoughts don't exist, but that isn't always an option for all of us. And at some point, we do need to step back into the field, into the fray. And so I'm looking at this from a very human perspective. And there's going to be a lot of very deep human work done this weekend over the course of the workshop. And I'm really looking forward to it. Tomorrow is going to be working with the elemental realm, and I couldn't be any deeper into the elemental realm as I am at the moment, surrounded by running water, melting snow, the rocks, the trees, sunlight beginning to filter through. As I was walking down here, I became warm enough to need to remove my hat, but as I found my little space down here to kind of nestle in and sit down, the temperature's dropped again, so the hat goes back on. All of these differing climates in a very, very short space, and that's what I found fascinating about where we are. There's almost like a microclimate of energetics occurring constantly. Again, this is something that is very it's very specific to where we are. It's very specific to the mixture and the merging of the timelines. And as all of us sort out where we are in that story, in that timeline, eventually we find ourselves gravitating and moving towards the timeline that serves us on the highest level, which I think if we all come to the other end of it, we'll find out that's the golden timeline. It's the timeline that we are all collectively attuned to, even if we have different motives, different perspectives, different aspirations, different hopes for the world. What we're doing is we're all collectively unifying from the heart. So what we're seeing out in the world at the moment is a restoration, and it can only be called a restoration, of people's heart-centeredness. What matters the most? How do we achieve it? How do we look after one another? And it all goes back to that collective frequency that many of us picked up on at the beginning of the year, which is basically alluding to the community goal print. That goal print where all of us are collectively sharing a heart-centered wish and a need, more than anything else, to look after ourselves, look after one another, and look after this beautiful planet that we live on. I mean, I've heard many people saying recently, I need to leave my country, I need to leave this planet. And once I've ceased my incarnation here, I'm never coming back again. You know, if I had a quid for every time I've heard people say that, I'd probably be on an island in the Seychelles now on a permanent basis. But I personally believe that wherever we are in the world, it's where we are meant to be. And you have landed there, you've incarnated there for a reason, because you are a piece of the puzzle. And it's very important to begin to start to ask why. You know, why are you where you are? Why are you experiencing what you're experiencing? Why are you seeing and feeling and moving through the things that you are moving through? Never before and never again will we experience a period of time like we are experiencing at the moment. It's completely unique. And it's unique because nobody knew the outcomes when they applied the frequency and the vibration to where we are. And what we are going through, what we're moving through, is entirely experimental. You might have heard me make or use the analogy before of looking at other systems or other civilizations, ascended civilizations that have been through a similar process to us. And I can remember asking years ago, who are the souls that we are in contact with, or a lot of us are in contact with regularly, who've been through what we're going through now? And there was a lot of umming and ahhing and sucking air through the teeth, you know, like, oh, can't really think of anyone. And then it came back that it was Sirius, the beings of Sirius, the Sirian constellation. They had a similar ascension process to us, but it occurred over a much longer period of time. So we've chosen to jump from 3D to 5D in 20 years, from 2012 to 2032. That's the end date, that's the end goal. But the beings of Sirius, the ones that inhabit the, almost like the intellectual realms, the halls of learning, Lord Katumi, the planet, the university planet, so to speak, where we do all our learning before we come down here. They did what we're doing in 300 years. If you were going to compare the time scales, so 300 years, and then we're doing it in 20. And we wonder why the whole thing feels like it's a rocket ride and a bit of a bugger's muddle, as my granddad used to say. So, at the moment, we have got numerous very volatile circumstances occurring in the countries around us. I mean, I live in the UK, as you can probably tell by my accent if you haven't listened to me before. I am currently in Stuttgart in Germany, and the political field here is very volatile. The United States, however you view what is going on in the United States, everything has a rolling ball effect. Now, I've been watching some very interesting kind of YouTube documentaries. I don't usually look at it, but I'm feeling the urge recently to kind of educate myself on what's going on a little bit, not get emotionally invested, not become part of it, not become part of the positivity or the negativity, or even have any kind of view on it, really, just to be aware. And I think that's where a lot of us sit now, is to become aware, to educate ourselves, to know what's happening. And it then asks the question, how are we going to participate in that? How are we going to navigate in it? You know, and I'm not saying whatever you choose to do, whether you're part of the system, whether you're not part of the system, whether it means absolutely nothing to you, whether it means everything to you, it doesn't matter. What really matters now is how we begin to engage with it from the future on a personal level, and the frequency that we're adding to that situation. And I've seen, like I said, I digress slightly. I've seen some interesting posts recently, and there was a term called black pilling, which I really liked. So it's a little bit like doom scrolling, like when you're leafing through Facebook and you can't stop because maybe you've got embroiled in somebody else's argument and you're desperate to see the outcome. And so like doom scrolling becomes addictive, but also this term black pilling. So you've heard of the terminology red pill or blue pill. It's a Matrix terminology from the movie. You take the red pill, you go down the rabbit hole, you never come back. You take the blue pill and you stay asleep forever. Well, black pilling is different. Black pilling is a term that's used for people that have kind of gone down the rabbit hole, and they've gone down so deeply that they never come out again, because they assume that everything, and I mean everything, that's occurring around them is a conspiracy, and that there is no hope, and that everybody on this planet is inevitably going to, fall foul of the kind of the parasitical entities that have been running the third dimensional matrix successfully. It's a very interesting one, because it also indicates the level of trauma in the field. And I think it's incredibly important to be pulling back from the field enough at the moment to be able to treat that trauma within ourselves successfully. And I've made some of the things that I say might come across a little bit blasé, but there's always an element of, I never mean anything with ill will or anything but humour. But I seriously believe that the majority of light workers serving on this planet at this moment in time, me included, are suffering from some form of PTSD. How can you go through what we're going through, even if it doesn't matter how beautiful your surroundings are? How can you go through what we're going through at the speed that we're going through it and not actually come out the other side of it with some form of trauma? How can we go through the heart initiations? How can we go through the awakenings? The awakenings being the main one. Particularly if you're a late wake up. You wake up one morning, you go to do your life, you go to work, come home, go through all the motions, and all of a sudden it's like someone puts a bag over your head, transports you to somewhere else, and when you finally arrive at the destination, the bag comes off your head and your environment has completely changed, or you have changed, and your perspective is different, the words you speak are different, your language, your frequency, vibration, the way that you dress, your whole perspective has changed. And then you go back to your reality, and the people that were there no longer feel the same to you, and you don't feel the same to them. That is one of the primary causes that I have seen that have created trauma. It's the questioning within ourselves. It's who am I? What am I? Or inevitably the catapult or the incredible spark that it took to wake you up, to bring you to who you are and where you are at this moment in time. So although I may have gestured about it, there is a big element that I believe that all of us should be looking at. So what's the solution? What's the solution apart from going within, detaching, loving ourselves through to the other side of it? Because sometimes that's not always possible. You might be living in a situation where you can't detach. You might have a family, you might have young children, you might have people that are dependent on you. So you can't just step out. How do you deal with it? How do you move through it? How do you love yourself to the point where you begin to actually look upon the experience that you're having with the rose-coloured spectacles that people talk about, And there's a huge amount of truth that's coming out as well now. I've noticed a big run on kind of like the false messiahs, however we regard them, whether it be in the spiritual world or whether it be in the outside world, the not so real world. You know, we regard the spiritual world as the real world, and that is becoming more the norm. But we're seeing like the who's real, who's not real occurring within the matrix, to the point that when we do get some good news, or what appears to be good news, everybody's doubting it because of the experiences that we've had. So I suppose today's talk is a little bit about gaining clear perspective. Okay, gaining clear perspective and participating but not participating. Dipping your toes in, learning what's going on, doing whatever you have to do to move through the day and to be who you are, to make the waves and the ripples that you need to make, but with the minimal effect upon your bodies and your fields. And there is going to come a point soon where action is going to be taken by all of us. Maybe it will just take one person to start that spark off, to take the movement. But there's going to have to be a point where we actively none participate. You might have heard some of my early videos about loving non-compliance. And this is going to be an interesting one, and I can really feel it becoming a thing this year. I mean, millions of us, millions of people go onto social media and complain every day about the rotters in kind of like, you know, the driving seat or the apparent driving seat, whatever power that we choose to attribute them with. You know, what they're doing, you know, how awful they are, more black pill stuff, the perpetual kind of cycle of doom, and we can do nothing about it, we're so helpless. But we can. First of all, we heal ourselves. The external reflection becomes more positive, it becomes glowing. When millions of us do this, the picture changes. But we also have to get to a point where we choose to actively stop participating. And one of the ways that I feel is going to become very prominent is by ceasing the funding that all of us inevitably provide. And that's going to be a story for another day, because I can feel it coming. And usually if I can sense or see or feel something coming, it's because there are people who are thinking about it or talking about it. So if you really want to make a difference, then you stop participating, you unplug. How do you unplug when we're so invested in everything around us, the shops, the banks, the schools, the medicine, all of the system? Are we that caught up in it? I don't think we really are. It's only taken 2 generations to breed out a human family's ability to provide for themselves, and I do think it's something at some point we're going to have to start re-navigating again. And this is all part of this whole cycle of moving back into community, moving back into support, helping one another. At the end of the day, you know, there's so many thousands and millions of people out there who need assistance, and they're not getting it because everybody is segregated, particularly in the cities. But I can feel that movement now. Everybody's starting to take notice. Instead of participating in the great illusion, we start participating locally. Hands that heal rather than lips that speak. All of these things are going to be going on. It's an exciting year, and this is the year that we're really going to start seeing magnificent changes moving through. But little steps to begin with, those tiny steps forwards, and they might feel like a huge investment of your energy. Anything that you can do to love yourself more at this time, take that tiny step. Might be a tiny step forwards, might be a tiny step backwards, but everything that you do for yourself, you are doing for the people around you, because ultimately that vibration, that self-service will radiate outwards, and it teaches the template, particularly the victim template, to become loving to oneself. Important stuff for a very important year. All right, my lovelies, well, I'm going to go in and get warm and start preparing mentally, physically and spiritually for this beautiful event this weekend. And the details for the event, if you still fancy coming along, if you're a bit of a late arrival, will be underneath it. But from my heart to yours, from these beautiful woods, sending you lots of love. Bye for now.